Hello, and welcome to Next Gen PA. My name is Samuel Pimentel, and today I'm joined with my co-hosts, Kennedy Holt.
And Michelle Engert.
And what we're going to be discussing is Governor Josh Shapiro's recent budget address from February 6th. Now, there's a lot to unpack here, as he talked about a lot of things, adding funding to things such as education, which for our age group is huge, as we look to the budget for what we should do in our future. Will certain things be secured? Will certain things have less funding? And we really just look to this to know what should we be concerned about. Now, as education already is a concern of ours, the fact that Josh Shapiro also shared that concern was reassuring to us. And I'm just wondering your guys' thoughts. What did you think about this new focus on education? Did you like it? Did you think he had good ideas? I'm just curious to hear.
Something that I personally am interested in seeing how it plays out is Governor Shapiro emphasized his proposal last month in regards to the consolidation for the oversight of 2 and 4 year state-owned institutions and under a new governance system. So I'm interested to see how that will play out within the PASHE system in our community colleges and or how that will either positively and or negatively impact our students, their tuition rates, and the families as well. And hopefully that would allow our students, hopefully with the net of their mobility and economic wealth.
I was really excited to hear that it was a 13.6% increase in education funding. I think that really showcases that education is a priority for the Shapiro administration. And, I'm really excited about that.
It's a large concern for a lot of incoming college students and also current college students, the amount of debt in which they will accumulate throughout the years and also leading up until graduation. So hopefully with the consolidating of these public institutions and to your colleges, community colleges, excuse me, hopefully that would help to decrease from that of the accumulation of debt.
Do you have any thoughts, Sam, on that being an upcoming college student?
I'm going to be saddled with debt for a few years after college. So it was nice to hear that he's focusing on higher education as well, especially with the kind of state that the sort of state related institutions were, like Penn State, Temple, and Pitt. So it was a little concerning to talking to my friends and just myself looking at these schools as well. I mean, Penn State already costs 36,000, something around that for dorming and in-state tuition. And without these funds, would that go higher? These schools are known for giving great scholarships to begin with. So how are you going to pay $50,000 education without scholarships or aid? So it was really nice to hear that he was making it a primary focus to help fund higher education and as well as public education. Our schools weren't exactly in great shape with the state Supreme Court ruling that we weren't even paying a good minimum per student. I think now it's going to be above 7,000. So to hear the investments in both was reassuring, but me personally, yes, I do think the college focus was nice as well. So what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And I think, Kennedy, you had some thoughts on teachers and teacher funding in Pennsylvania.
Something that I found very appreciative throughout his address was his plan on expanding our educational plans and setting aside money and resources for that of mental health counseling services, reconstructing of schools, and the student teacher stipends and recruitment. Because as you know, we have seen a rising teacher attrition rate, unfortunately, and as experienced throughout the other countries in many states, Pennsylvania has been faced with a widened teacher shortage. However, according to CBS News, a Penn State study found that the Pennsylvania state saw its highest teacher attrition rate since at least 2014 last year, with a 7.7% of teachers leaving their jobs. And unfortunately, a whopping number of 9,587 teachers left their positions between the 2021-2020 school year and the 2022-2023 school years. And And I really want to take this time to emphasize the importance of increasing our pay rates for our public educators and having pay equity for them, regardless of their geographical locations. Another thing that I found very interesting, and would like to kind of work through the complexities of, was Governor Shapiro's address regarding marijuana and the legalization of it. So I know throughout his addressing, he expressed his support for legalizing marijuana within Pennsylvania. In fact, it was reported that he cited $250 million in additional annual revenue lost for the state as a result of its slow process to legalizing.
I think that's interesting. Is yeah, I see where he's coming from. I mean, there's a lot of lost revenue from the fact that we don't sell it legally, and there's legal sales.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think putting, people's thoughts and feelings about marijuana aside, just simply like economics wise, it does make sense to legalize marijuana because you're sort of losing out on a lot of taxable revenue, different, revenue streams for the state. I mean, you think of all like the state owned liquor stores and those sorts of things, the amount of money that comes in through that. We're just losing out on a whole lot of money that could be put to good use, roads, education, things for the elderly, that kind of thing. Just to say, well, we don't want to fund this or we don't want to do this just because it's a drug that people have thoughts on rightly or wrongly, I think is crazy considering the amount of other states that have successfully had legalization and they've been really successful. Kennedy, what do you think?
Something that really stuck out to me about the legalizing or him pushing to legalize marijuana was how that will play into our judicial system and our mass incarceration system. And luckily for that part, the governor, he did advocate for the expunging of the records of individuals whom are incarcerated right now for marijuana and funneling $5 million to restorative justice. And as we know, restorative justice will allow alternative options to imprisonment.
Well, I guess just kind of something I saw in the news was that there's actually going to be a new law in Pennsylvania. This was proposed by a Republican state representative that now the growers are actually going to be able to sell directly to the customers rather than having to go through the dispensary system. Now, I find this interesting as this wasn't really something I thought about. I thought you had growers, dispensaries, and buyers, but this could completely kind of shake up that supply chain, as well as the fact that the representative was from Lebanon County, which is known for its agricultural scene. So I think it's interesting kind of see this alliance of farmers and the legalization of marijuana. Maybe something like this could help them get on board and maybe would help our farmers. I mean, there's a lot of money to be made here, and now if it's going to be made legally, it could incentivize them to grow marijuana and make more money. So I think that's really kind of an interesting bill.
Mm. Yeah, I think isn't that supposed to come into effect in March?
Yes, yeah, March.
Yeah. So, yeah, really not that far off. It'll be really interesting to see how many take this on and, sort of try and go the distributor route as long with the growing. I think it's interesting. I don't know what the implications are going to be for the future, but yeah, I guess in March we'll see if there's a lot of people that take that on.
And hopefully for when we talk about politics, he did say our failure to legalize and regulate marijuana only fuels the black market and drains much needed resources for law enforcement. So,
Yeah, I think I'm just a big fan of helping out Pennsylvania farmers, and I think any legislation that's going to help them would really just be refreshing. They've had a hard time recently, so seeing this was nice. And I guess, well, a little different. Something else that could help Pennsylvanians or has been helping Pennsylvanians is actually the war in Ukraine. While despite that being as far east as you can get from Pennsylvania, it's been affecting us. We've made 1.5 billion around that, over that actually, in revenue from sort of manufacturing of weapons, munitions, things of that nature. Now, I know there's been a lot of debate over does funding Ukraine help us? And from a foreign policy standpoint, there's debates to be had. However, the fact that Pennsylvania is taking in $1.5 billion, I think's great. We're known as the Rust Belt, so obviously manufacturing hasn't been doing too well here, but this could be an encouraging sign, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it.
I mean, it's crazy to think that Pennsylvania's like 3rd in the nation for our aid in Ukraine coming back and helping our economy. I think we're behind Arizona and Arkansas, crazily enough. With all, lots of defense contractors are here in Pennsylvania, so we're behind those 2 states. I think California is actually below us for revenue from this, which is sort of mind-blowing to think about. California is what, like the 6th largest economy in the world, so somehow Pennsylvania is beating it on this one economics thing. But I think this is really a point that I hope more people can realize that when we say aid to Ukraine or, aid to anywhere, it's not just simply giving money away and not seeing any return. That, actually it's investment in communities. Jobs in these factories or defense companies are able to survive because we are sending that aid money to Ukraine. It's sort of funding those industries. It is really important, not just for Ukrainians, but also for Pennsylvanians here that what we're doing is important. Financial concerns are something that everyone in the country is having right now. You can't really talk about the budget without people bringing up taxes or how is this going to hurt me down the line. I like funding for education, I like funding for new roads, all this kind of thing, but who's going to pay for it? I think Pennsylvania Republicans, there was a hearing that they voiced some concerns about whether this would impact taxes. Is that correct, Sam?
Yes, there was a hearing quite recently, and I mean, it's fair to see that concern. While funding for education is great, that is going to be $1.1 billion. And Josh Shapiro has promised us and alleviated that by saying our taxes won't go up. However, when you're doing kind of historic things, it's hard to really make that promise yet. So I do understand their concerns as nobody wants to pay high taxes. We already have a lot of expenses, and just adding more tax to that could really hurt Pennsylvanians. However, if we are able to go through this budget without these increased taxes, I think that'd just be really nice, kind of getting new services that we haven't seen in a while. Such as actually one that was another big focus, kind of a service that's been neglected and could help people out financially, was public transportation, which is notably cheaper than owning a car. I think there is over a new $200 million investment into public transit, which is huge. We haven't seen that in Pennsylvania in a while. And if this goes through, it's going to save people money. I mean, owning cars are expensive, emissions too, as well from cars. So I'm just kind of curious to hear your thoughts about renewed interest from the state government in public transit.
Yeah, I think we should all start trying to use public transportation more, especially with concerns about the climate and global warming. Scientists have been saying for years and years, we should all stop using cars as much, try and use public transportation. And you always see those diagrams of the amount of cars that would get off the road if people use trains or buses. And I think it's really great to see an administration that's sort of taking that idea and actually putting some money towards it. I know we all sort of laugh when we say Pennsylvania public transportation system. I mean, like, what really is that? We're sitting here in central Pennsylvania. I know there's a bus around here that goes from Harrisburg out to Carlisle, probably into Camp Hill. I can't really say I've ever seen anyone get on a bus. I've definitely seen the buses. Improving those systems and making them sort of more widely available, actual bus stops for people to actually get on a bus. So if this money is actually put to good use, I think it could really be beneficial for people in cities, hopefully more rural areas, rural communities, to have access to get to different places without having to rely on a car. I think would be really good.
I agree. I think I've seen one bench. downtown Harrisburg. There's one really nice bus stop where the beautiful clock is. Yeah, that's about it. I mean,
Yeah.
the scheduling for capital area transit is, without using the word terrible, it's not very good.
No.
And so I think adding that could be really helpful. And rural communities, I mean, they don't even have any access to public transit. I used to, before moving to this part of South Central PA, I used to live somewhere a bit more rural, and you had to drive. And unfortunately, many people in rural communities are poor and impoverished. So owning a car is not really the most convenient thing, which leads many people to just have no transportation at all. And in a state like Pennsylvania, which we rely so much on our rural communities and have been neglecting them a bit, we should try to get public transit out there as well to help them either commute to cities or just get around their towns. So I really think that a renewed focus on public transit is a necessity, not just for economics, people, but also our environment as well. Now, as we were just discussing public transit, which is kind of a big issue for people, we also just discussed kind of hot topic voter issues as well: education, opinions on marijuana, spending and taxes, and Ukraine. I mean, these are issues that divide our houses and also divide people on who to vote for, which is why I'm really excited for next week when we're actually going to be talking about these kind of swing decisions, things that will make people cross party lines, as certain people disagree with the party they're affiliated with on these hot button issues. So I'm really excited to discuss this more and just kind of really get into this, as 2024 election is going to be huge. As in Pennsylvania, you have United States representative elections, presidential elections, and a senatorial election where Bob Casey will be running for re-election, and he's going to have a Republican challenger. So we're going to really have to see how he defends his position, or if this Republican challenger has some good new ideas. And I'm really excited for that. How about you?
Yeah, no, I can't wait to try and dive into what we think is going to affect voters going into the polls for primaries coming up in April. I think, what we've seen from exit polls from other states, there have been some really divisive topics, things that people are really concerned about. So I think our next episode is going to be great, and I hope you all join us then. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you all for listening.
Next Gen PA is a podcast from the World Affairs Council of Harrisburg. For more information on the World Affairs Council of Harrisburg, visit our website at wacharrisburg.org.